concept of wellness it's really beyond just physical health, because when you talk about wellness, you're talking about a much more holistic approach to health. And wellness includes different aspects of health, if you want to, all the way from physical, emotional, intellectual, occupational, social, spiritual. And under the occupational prong of wellness, of course, we have to take care of our financial health also. And that's basically going to be our focus for today. Now, in my capacity as legal advisor to the program, I do want to put out this disclaimer that while the speakers that we bring to you are obviously, extremely successful and knowledgeable, it is important to point out that because this is a group setting, and any feedback or advice that or thoughts that they're sharing with us doesn't really take into account your personal situation. So if you are acting on that advice, you either should be comfortable and confident that it does apply to your specific life situation, or you should seek out expert guidance. And on that note, I will now introduce our program coordinator, moderator, and that is Mr. Dinesh Chandra. Dinesh, as most of you know, is a transformational change management guru, as he is referred to, both for personal and professional change. And he has done work with international companies and led teams pretty much across the world. And I think some of the things that he's most proud of is the work that he has done with the blessing and guidance of His Holiness Dalai Lama, which actually led him to write a book called What is True Wealth. And I get a dose of his wisdom pretty much 24/7, considering he's also my better half. But on that note, I will give you Dinesh Chandra.
Thank you, Annie, and welcome all again. I'm really excited today. Some of my friends whom I have known for a long time are here on the call. Anil Bhandari and I landed together in US in just around 1969. And Dr. Bal Gupta is my professional golfer friend, and he was my professor as well. And Prakash Ambegaonkar joining us from Orlando. Dr. Prakash Ambegaonkar is another entrepreneur. So today we have some wonderful audience, and on top of that, we have an amazing guest speaker today, Ajit Deora. Ajit and I actually met about a year and a half ago. I was having some issues, and Naren Bakshi, who is the co-founder of this, along with Dr. Pankaj Vij and Som, he introduced me to Ajit. And Ajit gave me some advice, and that really worked. So thank you, Ajit, for that. And then when I was getting ready to invite a guest speaker for financial wellness, which is part of the occupational wellness, as you all know, then Ajit, at that time, I got to know a little more about him. And what I realized that not only he is a successful entrepreneur, and he has done very well, he also is a health hero. And rather than dwelling on it myself, I turned to Ajit to share his amazing story, and then we'll get into his financial management, financial planning wisdom. And on top of that, we have the last half an hour for all of you to share your wisdom. And we have some wonderful financial advice, planner, and thinkers today. And welcome Vibhasana as well, and Jinendra, my friend from a long time. So a lot of people here will have a wonderful conversation today. So with that, Ajit.
Thanks, Dinesh. Thanks, Annie, for inviting me. I appreciate it. And good morning to everybody on the call today. A quick background about myself. I'm originally from Jodhpur, Rajasthan, but grew up in Chennai. I come from though my forefathers supposedly were extremely well off, very rich, I suppose, at one time, but over a period of time, for many reasons. I grew up in a very, very, I would say, lower middle class family in a home that was barely, I would say, 600 or 700 square feet, and it was 7 siblings, my mom and dad. So 9 people living in a small home of maybe 600, 700 square feet, right? And it was very, what do you call, uh, I always felt very difficult looking at my parents. Putting food on the table was very, very hard, etc., etc., right? So early on in life, I sort of made a decision. I have to do something that I can help my family, right? So most of my early years went off in that thought. I was lucky enough, by the way, to get into IIT Madras. I'm a graduate of IIT Madras 1980 batch. And I knew in those days, in the 70s and 80s, making money in India was not easy. As you guys know, India has changed a lot since then. So I said, you know what, I, I have to come to America somehow. Managed to get a scholarship for my master's. Did my computer science, and I found out what major I should take that would be easiest to get a job in the US once I graduate. And I happened to have a conversation with my uncle who was in the US that time. He said, you know, beta, do computer science. So I came, did my master's in computer science, uh, lucked out getting into Intel, spent 5 years at Intel building up basic talent in engineering, management, etc., etc. But I really didn't really want to work for anybody, you know, because I knew things have changed now, by the way, but those days making money as an employee was rather difficult, right? It would take you 30 years or 40 years to generate a comfortable living. So I said, you know what? I got to quit and start my own company. So I left my very comfortable position at Intel in '87, and since then I've done about 5 startups. And I again have to thank God for the luck I've had. One of the startups went IPO, the other 4 got acquired. Net, I did very well financially, you know, but I paid a heavy price because of that financial success. This is now late 98, 99, and my health was not that great. I was about 200 pounds. I don't know if you can see me now on in the video. At that time, I was 200 pounds, could barely stand for a few minutes, constantly was looking for a chair to sit down, had all kinds of back issues, leg issues, etc. I said, you know what, I made enough money, now I need to focus on my health. So 98, 99, I was talking to some friends and he said, you know, there's this yoga teacher coming in, maybe you should start yoga, you know. So I started yoga in 2000 and I started liking it, you know, and people saying, man, you're looking good. You know, what have you been doing? So I said, I've been doing yoga. So, you know, I started learning how to take care of myself. And one of the things that my doctor pointed out to me, he says, Ajit, if you want to be physically fit, you cannot afford to be 200,000 pounds. You need to sort of come down to your BMI level. And I checked what my BMI needs to be in the what they call in the nice group, right? And it had to be in the 150 to 160. So I'm glad to report that my weight today is about 159. I'm currently not on any medication. I don't have any health issues. I don't have any fitness issues. I sleep like a baby, 7 to 8 hours a day. I wake up thinking, you know, life is really great. So I've spent a lot of time figuring out what type of a lifestyle I need to have. Uh, on one hand, you want to be intellectually challenged. On the other hand, you need to have the health and fitness to enjoy everything else in life, right? You want to enjoy travel, you want to enjoy your family, you want to enjoy what do you want to enjoy. Without health and fitness, you really can't do any of it unless no matter how much money you have, right? So I decided very consciously to make health and fitness my priority sometime in the early 2000 time frame. And for the last 20 years, I make it a point that I work out 1 hour in the morning every day. So I do a mix of yoga, pranayam, running up Mission Peak, various forms of back stretches, etc., right? I make it a point to do that. Also, when it comes to my diet, I eat everything, by the way, I drink everything, but I'm very conscious about the quality of food I take in, right? I make sure the food has enough nutrition, has enough protein, very low carbs, etc. So overall, I'm very glad the change I made for myself. And the thing that's very heartening for me is whenever somebody meets me, I get this. I'm not trying to boast or anything, but I'm just trying to make a point. People come and say, "Man, Ajit, you're looking so fit. How do you do it?" And that sort of motivates me to continue on. And I've been, I suppose, helpful to quite a few people making their own changes, right? So now I'm surrounded by people who are, all health conscious. We have a group of about 40 people that have sort of joined me over a period of 15, 20 years, and we do Mission Peak once a week, right? I can literally run up Mission Peak today. And that's my long story. Uh, Now, one more point I do want to make out, because it's a financial wellness session. I was taking a lot of risk being an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur is not easy, guys. If you know, you guys only hear about the success stories and you get to meet people who are successful. But for every success story, there are about many hundreds of people who don't make it. So entrepreneurship is very hard, very difficult. The lucky few make it. So I knew I was taking a lot of risk in what I was doing. And the last thing I wanted to do was to make sure my retirement was not at risk, right? So over a period of time, like Dinesh pointed out earlier on, I put away enough money over a period of time. I had enough life insurance, had enough annuities, etc., that when I knew my time for retirement came along, I would not have any cash flow issues, right? So today I'm very comfortably, I won't say retired. I suppose I'll never retire. I'm still on the board of about half a dozen companies. I do a fair amount of angel investments, but that's just to keep myself intellectually challenged. So I focused a lot of my energy over the years to make sure I never have a cash flow problem, right? So today I would say cash flow to different people is different. It could mean different things. To me and my wife, we decided one day to sit down and say, hey, when we retire, how much money do we really need to live a comfortable life? And we came up with a number, and that number is going to be different for different people, right? And we made sure we generate enough cash every month to meet that lifestyle requirement. And I'm very happy we did that, right? Another thing I made sure is, technology in the Valley, and I'm sure you guys know a lot of people who do very well in their career and then come around 50, in their early 50s, if they get laid off. And I know a lot of my friends who have gone through that. Getting a job, no matter how smart you are, is very difficult, right? Unless you're already in the system, getting into the system again is very, very hard. So another thing I've been trying to tell people is always have one more skill set beyond the skill set on which you're making money, just in case you need to fall back to make a living, right? So I've tried to do that a little bit as well. Last but not the least, we live in a beautiful home. I have to say that we are very lucky compared to the 500 square foot home I grew up in Chennai. Today I live in a 6,000 square foot, quote unquote, mini palace, if you may. But we've been very conscious to only buy things that we need, not what we want, right? There are a lot of stuff we want. I live in a very expensive community, Mission Hills, as you guys know. Some of you may know, in Fremont. But I can tell you, I'm probably the only Mission Hills resident who owns only one car. We have only one car. because we realized we don't need two cars. Why do we need two cars? Make the, insurance payment, this payment, that payment. We live with one car. Life is working out great. And that's my story. I'll be glad to, discuss it into any depth you guys want, because my goal is to help as many people as I can be comfortable in life. So what I found is, just as a summary, um, the way I measure wellness is how good a sleep you get. If you don't get good sleep, no matter how much money you have, something is wrong. Something is missing. Either money is missing, or health is missing, or fitness is missing. I measure by that, and I can tell you, I sleep like a dog for 7 to 8 hours every night. Right. So.
Thank you so much, Ajit, for sharing your amazing story in such an authentic manner. I really appreciate that. Now, let's go back to the couple of key things you have summarized. And I'm also asking all the other participants to get ready with my favorite question, which also I asked Ajit this question about what advice would you give to your children or your grandchildren? So, that kind of the need for cash flow as opposed to acquiring assets. If you have somebody who is just starting their career, 30 or 35 years old, and they are just beginning to build, how would you guide them, or what suggestion would you give them to how they can create cash flow, and why should they pay attention to cash flow? What are some of the problems they can get into as opposed to creating an asset?
So, by the way, I give this advice. I have two boys. The older one is 35 years old. He's married very comfortably. My younger one is 30 years old. He's a venture capitalist at Battery Ventures. So both the kids are doing extremely well. Financially, they're doing very well. Thank God for it. But like I tell them, the process of creating wealth, with the exception of a few people, right, has a finite time period, and that typically time period is from your mid-20s to, let's say, if you're lucky, mid-50s, right? So you have a 30-year time horizon. And no matter how good you are, there's a chance that what do you call, the stream of cash that you're able to earn may disappear like a cliff, right? So I tell my kids, and I tell everybody, the only way to guarantee the lifestyle you can enjoy over a period of time is cash flow, right? You could have $1 billion in the bank, like you could own the Jodhpur Palace, but if it doesn't have cash flow, there's not much the Maharaja of Jodhpur can do. Nobody's going to buy that palace from him. So without cash flow, you're sort of dead, right? Part of the reason Jodhpur of Maharaja has leased the hotel to Oberoi, that's generating him the cash flow, right? So I tell my kids, every investment you make has to have a cash flow thinking. So if you're going to be investing in stocks, make sure it is generating dividends, right? Don't just look for growth. If you're going to be investing in real estate, make sure it is cash flow positive. If you're going to be investing in startups, make sure that startup is generating, it's not just a concept, but it's actually generating customers and revenue, so your risk is sort of minimized, right? So my emphasis to my kids has always been cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, and to put off as much as they can afford, right? And different people can afford different percentages of the income they make, to sort of generating this cash flow for the long term, right? So my kids, as an example, put a maximum amount of money allowed into their 401k. I think it's like $16,000 or $17,000 a year. I forget what the amount is. They're both invested in real estate that's generating for them some rental income. I'm sure they do a lot of stupid stuff, because no kid listens to everything your parents tell you. But a lot of their investments are in stocks that generate dividends, right? And the interesting thing about dividend-bearing stocks, as some of you might know, they're typically large companies, and the risk associated with them crashing or going down get minimized as well, and that's me my advice to a lot of.
All right. Thank you, Ajit. Now